these numbers and where we are this year with our attendance boundaries and that stabilization that the new boundaries have created within our district. So we took the PASA low growth scenario and reviewed those numbers and matched that next to our current student enrollment, because as you know, the PASA data is brought to us from October to October. PEIM snapshot day, current enrollment at PEIM snapshot of the current school year, and then it is giving us that projection for the next school year's PEIM snapshot date. So we used our current enrollment as well to kind of as a point in time, where are we now and what do our facilities look like as we're making decisions moving forward. So in our policy FC Local, we are directed to review the annual enrollment kind of with a 5-year lens moving forward. And so we looked at those projections for next year, 16-17, but certainly with that 5-year lens, and then 10 years out as we start making decisions and bringing recommendations forward. And so FC Local charges staff to make recommendations to the superintendent, and for the superintendent to determine whether or not we are to limit student transfers, move programs, utilize portable buildings or temporary classrooms, or cap enrollment as a way to better manage or better utilize buildings for student enrollment. And so what we are bringing to you this evening is a look at our projections and letting you know in those areas where we're approaching or actually exceeding 120% utilization, or we're below our 80% utilization, what are we asking Dr. Dupree or recommending to Dr. Dupree that we do for those campuses to better stabilize their enrollment? And should we need to go a step further and recommend to the board that we build a school, or that we close a campus, or that we change attendance boundaries, then that would be something that we would definitely bring to you. And we do mention one scenario within this presentation this evening that we'll be bringing to you for further consideration as we move forward. So as I said, tonight's presentation is information about those campuses with high utilization and low utilization across our district based on the low growth scenario. There's a map over here of our entire district that I may refer to just for perspective as we move forward, and then there are a couple of maps that we'll review as we go through the presentation. I'll also provide information on 17-18. Moving forward, what are we doing in terms of the attendance boundaries for the new campuses that are opening, as well as for those 6 campuses where we'll be getting some additions based on what's in the 2014 bond. So we'll talk through that as well. So we'll start in the northwest portion of the district. This was referred to as Planning Area A in our facility study and in the boundary feeder planning. And so northwest, to give you that perspective on the map, is the northwest in this area here. And based on what PASA has shared with us and what you heard this evening, it is one of our growing areas and continues to be, as we knew that it would be in our work with feeder patterns and boundaries last year. And so Madden Elementary, although it is new, as you heard, it is exceeding. It is a highly utilized campus. In fact, Madden's projected utilization for 16-17 is at 125.6%. Now that's without portables or doing anything to change any type of student enrollment or make any recommendations. And on slide 33, that's confirmed in PASA's presentation, because that is one of those high growth areas for our district. So we looked at this and we looked at it 5 years out, and what we're recommending is that we limit student transfers because we just frankly don't have the seats there at Madden to accommodate student transfers. We're also recommending that we move the pre-K program. Stacy, Dr. Tapera referenced that pre-K program. It currently takes up 3 classrooms, or utilizes 3 classrooms at Madden, and it's some live-in students, but it's students from other elementary schools as well. So it's one of those programs that can be moved, and we are working with the curriculum department to relocate pre-K to Pecan Grove and to three different schools. Let's see. Thank you, Mission Glen and Holly, and that will increase the capacity at Madden so that those live-in students who are zoned to Madden and are in kindergarten through 5th grade can attend can utilize those 3 classrooms for those live-in students. We are also bringing in portable buildings. As you may or may not know, if you visited Madden, it doesn't have, it's limited in terms of land at the site. And so 3 portable buildings can come into Madden, and with the bringing on board of those 3 portable buildings, we're able to impact the utilization at Madden so that it would increase capacity and be at 108% utilization. That's with 3 portables kind of locked into. Any additional portables would then encroach on the playground area or in other areas utilized by the students. So we've worked with the principal, worked with the Department of School Leadership, and we're going to be engaging with that community in April and May, this April and May, to get feedback from them, share this scenario with them, and get feedback from them to determine if our enrollment exceeds the projections, then what is the feedback from the community in terms of the possibility of capping enrollment, or possibly bringing in a portable that might be a little bit on the playground or limit a little bit of the playground area. Is that something that the community would be in favor of rather than capping enrollment? And we'll be bringing that information back to keep you abreast of how we've engaged with the community and what the community has shared with us in terms of their desire.
Can I ask a quick question just before we leave this slide? So you said moving the pre-K program and adding the 3 portable buildings will bring utilization down to 108%.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
So it would be 6 additional classrooms for K-5 students from where we are today.
Okay.
Let me rephrase that. 3 pre-K, then the 3 portables add 6 classrooms. So that's an addition of 9 classrooms. All right, we're still in the northwest portion, and we're going to stop and visit at Oakland Elementary School. And as you heard, and you well know, Oakland Elementary is overutilized. In fact, it was the 5th graders at Oakland last school year attended at Bowie Elementary School because of the number of students that were there at that point. Oakland was not relieved significantly from the opening of Madden. However, we do anticipate that it will feel relief when Elementary School 49 opens. We'll begin that engagement process with the community to establish those boundaries beginning in the fall, and I'll provide a little bit more detail about that in this presentation. Oakland's utilization is projected to be, without portables, this is just the core of the building, it's projected to be at 150.7 with the projected enrollment for next year. Now, Oakland currently has 9 portable buildings. So if you factor the 9 portable buildings in, that puts their utilization at just under 100% utilization. It's important to note that they are projected to have 1,151 students, and this is lower than their highest student enrollment, and it is lower than the student enrollment at the time the decision was made to house 5th grade at Bowie. So just to kind of have that in perspective, at that point, it was 1,170 students, so it's somewhat lower. We are recommending to limit transfers at Oakland, and we're recommending to utilize the portable buildings that are currently there. With the 9 portable buildings, although that brings the utilization down to just under 100%, it's taxing on the core of the building for the cafeteria and the restroom and the utilization of that core part of the building. And so we are not recommending bringing in any additional portables. And we talked to the principal about this as well. The portable buildings, kind of the art, there's an art and a science to it. There's a data-driven piece where we reviewed and really looked at what do the numbers tell us. How many portables could we bring? How could you bring it down? What does that do to impact the utilization at the campus? Just the numbers. Then there's the data-informed piece of that, talking with the principal and how do they utilize the building and the areas within the building and the portables to determine what really is truly the best for each campus based on the needs of the campus and the needs of those students. And so it's definitely that science of numbers, but then the art in working with the principals and the principals knowing their community as well. We are also recommending and planning to engage with the community of Oakland to determine if we exceed those projections, then the feedback from that community is going to be vital in determining our next steps should we reach that before the end of the school year. Staying in the northwest portion, we're at Seguin Elementary School, and Seguin is 130% utilization, and that's without portables. So we're recommending that we limit student transfers. We're also recommending to move in portables. And bringing in portables, we can bring that utilization down to 113.7. That will be for this school year, because we anticipate that the opening of Elementary School 50 will impact and relieve Seguin.
How many portables will we need?
I'm sorry?
How many portables will we need?
Max, how many portables at Seguin?
Yes, ma'am. At Seguin, we're estimating that we're going to bring in 3 portables.
Thank you.
They're gaining an additional 68 students.
Thank you.
So in the bond, 2014 bond, we identified areas of growth, and we are in line with those projections. And at that time, the 2014 bond includes the additional classrooms at Cornerstone, Holly, and Oyster Creek. And you see there on that table how many classrooms each one of those campuses will be receiving through the bond. These additional classrooms will be completed at the latter part of the spring of 2017, and we plan for them to come online for the school year, 2017-18 school year. We're working with the Community Relations Department to provide a comprehensive communications plan with those principals so that they can work with their communities and explain exactly what to expect, what that's going to look like. In some instances, their students are in portables now, and those portables will transition to hard additional classrooms, and so we're working with them on a plan of how to ease that transition for the students and give them information about what to expect in the coming months. All of these campuses that are over capacity without portable buildings will be closer to 100% utilization with the addition of the classrooms. So Cornerstone, for example, if you noticed on the slide that showed that projected growth over time, it was the one with the yellow highlights that showed when campuses were reaching 120%. And Cornerstone Elementary, over time you saw that yellow highlight, but if you noticed, the projection was 1,101 students, and it stayed 1,101 students, because Cornerstone has been one of our very fast growth areas, as you well know, but it's also built out. So we're looking at that as some stability there. With the portables at Cornerstone, the utilization is at 101.6. So it is close to that. We like to keep them in that sweet spot, try to get as close to 100% as we can. And Oyster Creek Elementary is currently at 108.9% utilization. However, it does already have portables, and so its utilization with those portables is 87.2. The additions will come online and provide that permanent capacity there in that northwest region for Oyster Creek and at Holly. And so when we engage with the community regarding the new schools that are opening in that area, we'll also be looking at the capacity that those additions create in those schools and talk with communities that might be impacted when there's additional capacity, and we're looking at those numbers and talking about boundaries. In Planning Area A, still in the Northwest region, we have some campuses that are under that 80%, and you see them listed there. These campuses, being at or below 80% utilization, could, if they have portables, lose portables to those campuses that need portables. As we review all areas of the district, this holds true for all of the underutilized campuses, but it's also important to note that in doing this, we don't believe that we will have to purchase any temporary buildings. We believe that we have what we need. It's moving them from where we don't need them to where we do need them. Also, an important note around Garcia Middle School. Garcia Middle School is a campus that has been identified to receive students who are currently attending Missouri City Middle School or Krista McCullough Middle School. They've both been identified PEG campuses, and so when campuses are identified as PEG, we identify the campuses that could receive those students who wish to transfer. And because of Garcia's low utilization, it has been identified as a campus that could receive students from either of those schools.
Mrs. Martinez, just a minute. We have a question, Mr.
Can you remind me again what PEG is?
I would love to have Dr. Phyllis Hill or Dr. Christy Whitbeck remind us all what PEG campuses are.
It's a public education grant, and basically schools that are not high performing, that don't meet the standard, but they're not necessarily improvement required, students can transfer out, but unlike annual yearly progress, we don't have to furnish their transportation. They can go to another school, and the district designates what schools those are. Okay?
Just as additional information, McAuliffe is, because it was an IR campus, Missouri City is on its way, hopefully, out of that designation. It's still holding on to one data. You have to be free from your data point that got you into that classification for 3 years. So we're hoping that they're rolling out, because they're really doing some great things there. Also, just for your information, the Department of Student Affairs handles that, and all of those letters and communications to parents have been out, and those parents, there have been meetings held at the campuses and things of that nature to give them those options.
Thank you, ladies. Mr. George.
Help me understand it correct. Talking about I didn't do anything. Okay. Walker Station is eventually going to be an underutilized campus based on the numbers, and Cornerstone is going to be, we are building, and then did you say we are going to have build out plus portables, or just the build out?
When I was referring to build out, I was talking about the subdivision, or now it's you. The community, the neighborhood of Cornerstone, that community is built out, and there's no land available. Now, the school of Cornerstone currently has temporary buildings, but those temporary buildings or portable buildings will be replaced by the classroom additions. Right. And then you are correct. Walker Station is underutilized, with 72.3 being the utilization, and that's without portables. There are no portables there.
So, I guess my question there is: would you recommend maybe rezoning that area? Is that part of the recommendation?
That's not currently part of the recommendation, no, sir. It is. I won't touch that. It is absolutely something that, clearly those schools are close to each other, but it is not part of the rezoning that we'll be engaging around in the fall. As we look at that, we're looking to see that the additions that are coming online will provide that solution, and then, of course, continuing to monitor that student enrollment to ensure that we are staying where those projections are, and that we're able to maintain that enrollment at Cornerstone, knowing that there are also other options when we come back and we're doing our annual review next year. We'll look at where are we? Where is our enrollment at that point? What is the capacity of the building with the additions? What is the utilization, and what programs are there that we might look at? And we'll bring you updates to the information at that time.
I guess what I'm trying to understand is one facility to the other, maybe not even 1 mile, distance, and it simply makes sense to look into that option. If it is one facility is underutilized and the other one is having problem with overutilization, does that make sense? What I'm saying?
Yes, it does, and we will definitely make note of that, and look into the next 5 years and 10 years, and consider that as we are looking at our options for continuing to balance enrollment.
Thank you.
Yeah. And Mr. George, it does make sense, and Brazos Bend might also be in that same conversation, because it's all in that same region, and they're all very close. And Brazos Bend is also currently at 93% utilization. So all three of those schools might be in the conversation.
Okay. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that we should definitely look into it. It doesn't make any sense to me if we have facilities sitting next door underutilized, and we are struggling with overutilization in one campus. Right. I guess that's what I'm trying.
Yes, sir. We agree.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay, let's move to the central region of the district, Planning Area B. And as we enter this region, I want to remind you all that in the fall of 2016, we are opening Sullivan and implementing the boundaries for Sullivan Elementary School. The last 2 years, the enrollment for Commonwealth has been high. It's been an overutilized campus, and as you know, we've been in overflow. So students who moved in new to the Commonwealth area or new to the future Sullivan area were overflowed, if you will, to Colony Bend or Austin Parkway. So as we implement those boundaries, students can return. If they live in the Commonwealth area, they'll return to Commonwealth and certainly to Sullivan as we open Sullivan. We will have the appropriate utilization to allow our rising fifth graders, current fourth grade students, to apply for a grandfathering transfer or grandfathering agreement so they can stay at their current elementary school if they want to finish out in that way. We do not foresee overutilization of any of those schools that are impacted by the opening of Sullivan as things kind of shift back to their normal spots. In fact, we anticipate Sullivan to open at 90.5%. And although it will reach its capacity within 2 years, Sullivan will not be over 103% utilization looking forward 10 years. So that's looking good. All right. And I just wanted to give you a brief kind of reminder here of what the Commonwealth Zone looks like today, even with kids attending in overflow. There's a power line, just to kind of give you perspective. The power line kind of goes in this area here. So I'm going to show you 2 other maps that look completely different than this with color, and so that perspective might be important to you. So this is the Commonwealth Zone for 15-16, and the way it has been in the past few years. This is the new Commonwealth boundary, and this right here for perspective is that power line. And then this shows you the Sullivan area, and that would be the power line. So you see how it was kind of divided up at that point. All right, I mentioned at the start of the presentation that we were coming to you with a board recommendation, and that is that administration is recommending to close MR Wood, which is currently used for the DAEP. We are recommending that this be used for students, that MR would be closed for student use, and that we relocate the special education district support staff to this site, create a parent education support center for parents of special needs children, and that the programming that's currently housed at MR Wood be consolidated at other locations in the district. So you can see that consolidation from MR Wood to the Ferndale Henry site, with the exception of the elementary DAEP, moving that to Lantern Lane, and we'll look at Lantern Lane's utilization soon here. There is an SLC program at MR Wood, which is the Structured Learning Center, and those students, their placement will be reviewed on an individual basis to align with their least restrictive environment. Administration is going to provide more detailed information to you at the board workshop on the 7th, and then bring a recommendation to you at that board meeting on March 28th. So we're moving into Planning Area B, or we're still in B, with Lakeview Elementary and Lantern Lane Elementary being the campuses with low utilization under 80%. And as I mentioned, Lantern Lane is the campus where we will move the elementary DAEP because there is capacity there for that. So that takes us into Planning Area C, or the Southeast region, which is another one of our growth areas, as you heard from PASA, and as we projected last year, or knew last year. Heritage Rose is one of the campuses that is large. It is, without its portables, utilized at 105.3%. We are adding portables to bring it to closer to 100%. In fact, with the portables, we will reach 96.7% utilization based on the projections. We believe this area will be impacted by the opening of Elementary School 48, and we will begin that engagement in the fall. We are recommending that we limit the transfers of students to that campus. Schiff Elementary, as you know, is a highly utilized campus. It is projected to be at 168.1% utilization, and with portables, it will be at 118.8%. We will attempt to bring in another portable to lower the utilization to 109.6, and that's after talking with the principal and knowing that the core of that building can withhold or take on that portable and sustain the students that are there. That said, we are limiting or asking to limit student transfers to Schiff, and we're also going to engage with that community should we see that we're approaching that projection. Baines Middle School is projected to be at 110% utilization, and with portables brought down to 103. This will provide additional capacity and will result in a total utilization of 94.7 with new portables. So with the current portables that are there, it's at 100.3, but we'll be able to bring in others and we'll come down to 94.7. And that will hold the growth and accommodate that area until the opening of Middle School 15, because Baines will be impacted by Middle School 15. Ridgepoint High School is currently projected to be at 102.3% utilization, and we're proposing to add 3 portables, which will take it down to 96.5. However, as you heard, this is a steady growth area over the next 10 years, and by 2019, we're expecting to be at 120% utilization without portables of Ridgepoint. And so this is an area where we really need to look at it very, very closely and begin working aggressively toward some solutions for the foreseeable future. It may require some boundary adjustments, but we'll definitely keep this on our radar and keep you abreast of the direction as we look toward the next 5 years and maintaining the best use of that facility possible.
Can I ask a quick question before we move on? How many portables does Baines currently have?
Yes, ma'am. Baines currently has 3 portables, and we're proposing to bring in 2 additional.
Okay, and Heritage Rose, you said, are there currently portables at Heritage Rose?
No, ma'am. There are currently none at Heritage Rose, and we're proposing to bring in 2.
And the 2 will bring it down to the 118.8%?
No, ma'am. At Heritage Rose, it would bring it down to 96.7.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong slide. Okay. Okay, and then at Schiff,
Yes,
how
ma'am.
many portables do they currently have?
Schiff currently has 7, and we are working with the principal and also with our current architect who is doing that classroom addition to see if we can get 2 more in there. We spoke with the principal, and she would prefer that process over an overflow process. And so that's, we're working to get a total of 9 into Schiff.
So, okay, so for 9 total prior to the addition.
Yes, ma'am.
Prior to the addition and the opening of elementary school 48 may also impact the utilization at Schiff.
And when are the additions? Did we say when the additions, did I forget when the additions are supposed to be online?
Late spring 2017.
2017.
For full,
That's
coming
right.
full online, the school year 17-18.
Okay, thank you.
Beth, what was the utilization rate at Ridgepoint?
Ridgepoint is currently at 102.3 with the projections, and we're recommending to add 3 portable buildings, which would bring it to 96.5. Sorry, there are currently 2 portables at Ridgepoint.
No, Ridgepoint currently 0 portables at Ridgepoint right now.
0 at Ridgepoint, 2 at Baines.
That is correct. Yes, ma'am. No. We 3 at Baines, proposing to bring in 2 for a total of 5. 0 at Ridgepoint, proposing to bring in 3 for a total of 3.
Okay. So we're moving on to the classroom additions in Planning Area C. And just as in Planning Area A, we have 3 schools where we are planning to bring additions online: Scanlon Oaks, Schiff, and Sienna Crossing. This will add capacity, and it will also, we will have added capacity as we look at the boundaries in this area with the opening of elementary school 48. The low utilization campuses in Area C are listed above. And we have Hunter's Glen as the elementary school designated to receive PEG transfer students from Armstrong, Briargate, Goodman, and Ridgemont. Those are 4 of the PEG identified campuses. Hunter's Glen is currently at 51% utilization, which provides that capacity for those students. And on this list, you have Missouri City and McCullough, which, as you know, are the PEG campuses that may lose students to Garcia Middle School. Willow Ridge High School is identified as a PEG campus, and they may lose students who choose to attend Travis High School. Travis High School is the designated PEG transfer school for Willow Ridge. So in summary, for the 16-17 school year, we're going to be engaging with the community regarding the possible solutions at Madden, Oakland, and Schiff in April and May of 2015. Please pardon that. That should be this, that is 2016. We're going to be adding and removing portable buildings. We're going to be implementing the elementary school boundaries for Sullivan. We're going to be asking that we limit transfers at those schools that are over 120% utilized. And we are recommending the closing of M.R. Wood, bringing more information to the board at the workshop on the 7th with a recommendation on the 28th. And we're constructing the additions that were identified in the 2014 bond. So let's look at 2017-18 because we have some things on the horizon that are critical, and those classrooms that are being added to 6 of our elementary schools will create capacity that we need to consider as we enter into the discussion about boundaries for the opening of elementary school 48, elementary 49, elementary 50, and middle school 15. And we are going to follow a community engagement process similar to the one that we use during our district-wide feeder pattern and boundary process. It will be specific to those communities that will be impacted by a potential or possible boundary change. And so in September, we'll begin determining and identifying those campuses that might be impacted. And then in October, we'll begin working with those focus groups to bring boundary options forward in November, get community feedback, and tighten those up, shape them up to be able to provide information to the board, and then ultimately recommendations to the board per policy FC local in January of 2017. As you saw from the PASA information and from the numbers that we've shared with you this evening, the Northwest region has such growth that we definitely need to be looking at land in that area, in the Northwest region, Planning Area A. And as soon as that land is purchased, we need to be talking about our next steps so that we can relieve overutilized school in this area. Adding capacity to this planning area is critical. It will then be needed to accommodate the growth in the Aliana area. So in quick summary, for 2017-18, we're going to bring attendance boundary recommendations to the board in January 2017. We're going to continue to monitor enrollment on our projected enrollment and current enrollment so that we can ensure the best use of all of our facilities, and certainly that we're relieving the planning area A in terms of those overutilized campuses, and rezoning in area C, planning area C, as we open up 48 and middle school 15.
Thank you, Mrs. Martinez. Do we have any questions from any of the trustees? I have a question about, towards the end, just there, you had something up about elementary school 51, and it occurred to me earlier in the presentation, had we considered an addition at Oakland Elementary, and I wonder if this is if an addition at Oakland Elementary is a need, or because I see it being very full for a long amount of time, and I'm not sure how 49 and 50 are set to relieve that, and maybe 51 is part of that also. Could anybody speak to that at all? Do you want to?
As we engage the community, I think that would be a very viable option. As far as actually getting an addition built at Oakland, we would need to open up 49 first, move the students so that we could reduce that portable load there, so we would actually have a spot to build the addition. So the sequencing would have to be build 49, do the zoning, look at the addition, and then look at the addition after the 49 took off the portable buildings.
Okay, but I think okay, so I would be curious to know more about that, because it seems like the neighborhood where 49 is going there's a lot of houses being built right now, and those numbers are increasing. But I don't know how many houses are expected there or anything.
And part of the future considerations in the feeder pattern and boundary study, one of the future considerations was the theoretical boundaries of that area, and certainly those are not set, but it's a starting point from which to engage the community, and that showed a rezone of sorts that would eliminate that overutilization of Oakland and pull those students into 49. So at that time, though, we weren't looking at that growth in the Madden area to the extent that we are. So it will be all part of that discussion, and certainly provide capacity that we may well need.
Okay, that's interesting. And of course, to me, a priority is maintaining feeder patterns and a long-term path for these students, so that they're not jumping around and having disruption in their Fort Bend ISD experience. So, okay, well, thank you for your hard work on that. I guess I have another question, and that is, you did all this projections based on the low growth model. I think where we ended up in this year is somewhere above the low growth, and it's closer to the moderate growth model, maybe slightly below the moderate growth, but pretty much almost right on that. And so what is your thinking behind using the low growth projections, and what's the difference in the number of students, and where might we see impact, if there was to be impact, particular locations?
Okay. So moving into this school year for staffing and budgeting, we did use the moderate for 15-16, and we determined that based on the state of the economy and some recommendations, we looked at the low growth for this year. But as we analyzed the data and looked at our hot spots in the district, Max and I had a lot of conversations about that, and so we pulled the low growth and the moderate growth and kind of looked at them side by side, particularly for Oakland and Madden and Schiff and the Siena area. And it really was not a significant difference. Pasa can probably answer it even, or Max more specifically, but at Oakland, I think it was a difference of 6 students. Am I quoting that correctly?
I believe that's
when we
right.
looked at the difference between the moderate projection and the low growth projection. So just kind of give you some perspective, but we could give you those numbers if you're interested in that information.
And in no case did it say, when you went from low growth or from moderate growth to low growth, did you have to bring in an additional several portables? I mean, it was just a few students in each case. It didn't impact, I guess the accounting words, it didn't materially impact what our plans were.
Okay, thank you. That helps with that. Do we have any other questions or comments from anybody? All right, well, thank you very much for your presentation, and thank you, Dr. Guzman and Dr. Tempora, for being here today. Next, we have the board is convening in closed session under the Texas Open Meetings Act, and we will be in closed session, hopefully not too long, and then we'll be back out here for more information items. The board's now convened in closed session.